The International Sustainability Standards Board, or the ISSB in short, just opened a satellite office in Beijing as of this morning. It's reported by the South China Morning Post. The location speaks volumes about China's strategic commitment towards climate targets and, of course, including their own strategic interests. ASEAN corporates are equally committed to our targets, not just because climate change is an integral fabric of trade agreements, but we too are global citizens with a responsibility to make business a force for good. In this segment, we'll be joined by senior leaders in hospitality, energy, real estate, and industrial sectors to share their green transition journeys. On the panel, we have Kun Chongpan, Chief Sustainability Officer of Minor International. Kun Chongpan will be connecting with us via Zoom. We have C.Y. Lim, CEO of Yinsen Holdings. We have Vinamra Srivastava, CSO Capital Land Investment. And last but not least, Dr. Morgan Carroll, ESG Director of Vingroup and VinFast. Moderating this session is Sharil Azwar Jimin, Chief Sustainability Officer at Maybank. Sharil, may I cordially invite you and the panelists onto the stage, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our next session. Today alone, we've heard the words decarbonization and energy transition at least 20 times. Yeah, so as the CSO of Maybank, in the presence of my bosses here, all I can say is hashtag no pressure. Yeah, but what we see here is that it's no more moot. It has taken center stage. ESG and sustainability are real issues that are not just spoken about, but need to be acted upon. What happens in a 3.2 degree world? Because right now, if we do not do anything, the world is estimated to face global warming of 3.2 degrees by the year 2100. I'm not sure what happens at 3.2 degrees. The science has not given the exact details, but at 2 degrees global warming, we will see 90% of our coral reefs dead, and we will see mass extinctions. Now, that's going to cause a lot of problems, to say the least. Yep. But there is also scientific evidence to show that if all the ice in the Antarctic and the Arctic polar caps were to melt, the sea levels would rise 70 meters. 70 meters, yeah? So entire Florida will be gone. Netherlands will be gone. Massive parts of the world, 40% of the world will be displaced. Hence, this conversation today is real. So we have got four very interesting personalities representing four very, very progressive organizations, all leaders in their fields. One of them, unfortunately, cannot be here with us. We have Kun Chongpan calling in from Bangkok. Kun Chongpan is the CSO of Minor International. Minor by name, but certainly not minor by nature, right? Many of us would not have heard of Minor, but let me tell you, most of us in this room would have had the customer experience one way or another. Minor International has 2,500 restaurants in 25 countries. They have 78,000 hotel rooms across 530 hotels. Kun Chongpan, that's a lot of towels you clean every day. And I'm sure you're going to say something about that later. Right? we also have Mr. C.Y. Lim of Yinsen. Now, Yinsen, the star in sustainability in Malaysia, from very humble beginnings, operating as a transport and logistics company just across the causeway in Johor Bahru 40 years ago. And it is entirely different setup today. So we'll hear about that, about how Yinsen has transitioned and is now leading the way for sustainability. We have representing the economic miracle of Vietnam, the largest conglomerate in Vietnam, Vingroup, yeah? And through its various activities, particularly now VinFast, going head on against some of the biggest EV manufacturers in the world. So we are looking forward to hear about that as well. And lastly, but not least, representing somebody who needs no introduction in this part of the world, CapitaLand, right? One of Asia's largest diversified real estate groups, household name here in Singapore. Every other property you walk on will be a CapitaLand. Yeah? So thank you for joining us here today. I'm going to ask a general question for everybody. I will talk about decarbonization later, and all of you will talk about your strategies and the challenges you face. But there are certain things that are in common. So for each and every one of you, and maybe I will go with the lady first, yeah? Your companies are among the leaders in your respective industries for setting bold targets in the transition towards emission reduction, low carbon operations, and sustainable business practices. In your view, for each of you, what has been the single most important factor or ingredient in your green transition journey? So maybe we can hear from Kun Chompan first. Kun Chompan, selamat
Hi,
datang.
Sawadee-ka. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person, but definitely am there in spirit. Thank you for the questions and the introduction. Just talking about Minor, as you said, Minor has a big span of hotels and restaurants around the world. To get this big, we have to have a very strong management. And I think the key success factor for sustainability journey for us has been the support that we've got from the executive committee, especially the chairman and the CEO and the board in driving our sustainability journey. It's not easy. It's still a journey. But I think with that support, with that understanding, that's how we can get here today.
Lovely. So it's all about initially the internal stakeholder support and the tone from the top, yeah? Okay. Can we go to CY? So how about you? What has been driving you? What's been the single most important factor in your transition journey?
I think just starting out, an organization needs to have adaptability today. I think you just need to start out. I think the one good thing about targets, climate change target, is that the Paris Agreement has already set out 2030 neutral, 2050 net zero targets. So from there you work back and just start out, right? I think many organizations plan and just don't start out, right? I think just start, set the targets, and then from there you work back. And actually, when you start out and you make mistakes, people forgive, right? You don't want to be 10 years down the road and start making a lot more mistakes, and that's less forgiving, right? So I guess we took the stance that we were going to make bold targets, start out, adapt along the way, and slowly go, right? Emissions may go up along the way. Then we address that later on and see how we bring it down through different technologies like carbon capture. And technology will catch up as you develop, but I think if you don't start, the organization will have a much tougher time to adapt. And when it's at the end of the road, let's say your neutral targets at 2030, you're so far apart, you have to, it's going to be very, very costly to transition then.
Absolutely. So, I've been in too many roundtables. There's so many roundtables and forums now talking about transition, talking about climate change, and refreshing to actually meet people who do it, right? So go next to Dr. Morgan Carroll. Dr. Morgan Carroll is the CSO of Vingroup. Huge things going on within the group, within Vietnam. So how about you, the perspective of Vingroup?
From our perspective, I think two answers were quite colorful. And from our side, we look at the early embedment of ESG into your business strategy. You reap better rewards when you do it earlier, and excellence always wins. So I think from us, that's just basically where we do.
Okay, we hear more about that later. And Vinamra, big task for you. You're present in more countries than I can count. Last count was 270 cities, if I'm not mistaken. That's where CapitaLand is. What drives you, and what has been the single most important factor in your journey?
Yeah, it's complex. We've come a long way. I think the single most key success factor would be the realization that there's no silver bullet. You got to be willing to experiment and keep trying and keep moving and keep chipping away step by step. And that need to be flexible and adaptable as an organization, and to be able to balance trade-offs at every step, whether it's about sustainability versus returns, or whether it's about long-term versus short-term, or stakeholder management. So the ability to balance these without having the benefit of precedence or past success stories, because everything that we do in sustainability is breaking new grounds. So to have that courage to keep moving forward, I think is the most critical learning. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm going to go on to a bit more specific questions related to your organizations. And I'm going to go to Dr. Carol first, about VinFast especially, because that's really pressing issue here. A lot of talk about EV today, and a lot of expectations. Tesla is coming into the region fast, hard and fast, coming to Malaysia soon. Where are you currently now in the journey of building EV for Asia and the world market? And talk about a little bit about your strengths, particularly in terms of the circularity, the use of recycled batteries, and your access to renewable energy.
Thank you very much. I'm sure there's a lot of interest about VinFast and the cars that we're making. And we can be all proud that it's Asian orientated, and we make great cars, right? But just to give you in perspective, Vin Group is the largest corporate company in Vietnam. We have many P&Ls in the hospitality industry, real estate, retail, as well as medical facilities, and not-for-profit, Vin School, Vin Uni. And for me to keep my party hat on for each one is quite challenging. But today we want to talk a little bit about VinFast. I think that's the topic at the moment in the media. People want to know a little bit about what's happening. When are we going to market penetration? Unfortunately, I can't share with you the market penetration and the numbers, because we've put filings in for IPO, which is a good thing. Somebody mentioned that in the previous plenary discussion just before this. So that's a good thing for Asia. I just want to take you through some transitional aspects that we've done from VinFast perspective in terms of, that covers off on circularity. Most interesting is the battery aspect that people are always concerned about, and taking you in through to some aspects that we've done to manage VinFast into the industry. In terms of the return of investments, we've done exceptionally well, and the ESG has been part of that. And from a VinFast perspective, in 2021, we introduced the first EV called VinFast EV, which was E34, into the world market, and introducing the future of mobility in Asia, right? And in the same year, we announced our all-electrical strategy. In 2022, we also announced about our North American factory in North Carolina, and the reason why we went there was because it was a strong, the state had a strong commitment to developing a green energy economy. And up until recently now, you would have seen a lot of news media about our various models. Now, which company introduces so many segments of models in 1 year? It's unheard of. We should be proud as Asian company that we've done this. And we introduced from segments A to E, And more recently, you would have seen on the news, we've done a two-door, which I think maybe perhaps the ladies would like that more often. It's nice and small. You can wiggle around in Singapore because there's not that many great infrastructures in terms of roadways, right? And the cars are really unique, and I think the quality has always been there for VinFast, and we always seek the support of Asia. We will be trading in Asia in terms of the Asian market, and we try to do that as we step our way towards North and European markets as well. A couple of things that you may not know is that VinFast was the first company to become pure electric. We missed out on hybrids and all that, and we just moved straight over to pure electrics. You can imagine the financial implications. We had to change the factory. We had to change and retrain our staff. We upgraded to more robotics with a manufacturing facility that had scalability, right? And this is all done in Asia. And that is a unique opportunity. We're not only in in 2022, we also joined the Climate Pledge. We made a commitment to be net zero by 2040, 10 years before COP declaration of 2050. We also then signed the declaration of COP 26 or ZEV, Zero Emission Vehicle aspects. In terms of battery recycling has been improving over the last couple of years, right? And we've been able to recover your cobalt, your lithium, and your materials that come out of your batteries. Even the secondary materials like aluminium, copper, and graphite. And the reason for doing that is that by us recovering that, and it will reduce the need for mining, additional mining activities. So it actually goes back into a circular economy in the long run. And VinES, which is another P&L of Vin Group, we develop batteries as well. Yes, we do. Go Asia. And we also have, VinES also establishes BESS. I don't know if you're acquainted with the term, where we do storage batteries as well. And VinES has got we're building a recycling plant in Vietnam that has, in collaboration with Li-Cycle. And Li-Cycle is a Canadian company, and they boast that they can recycle our materials up to a 95 recovery percentage, which then helps us not to rely on additional material. That recycling material also only indicates that we've got only a small percentage of waste back into the environment. In terms of our EV batteries, everybody's focused on EV batteries of the car. When the car's battery gets to an 80% capacity, they return it. We put it into storage systems until it reaches a certain capacity of functionality, and then we recycle that. And I think there was a lot of concerns with people asking about batteries as such. When you would have seen recently in the EU that there'd been new battery laws that are coming out and lower carbon footprints for each battery as such. In terms of our circular economy, we've always been doing it at VinFast, even when we built the factory for ICE, and now that we are pure EVs, we've introduced a couple of aspects to lower our carbon footprint. A couple of them was that we reduce waste to landfill, we reuse and reduce our water consumptions, we remove single-use plastics, and we focus on using recyclable materials. In 2023, we are also looking at rooftop renewable energy at our factory in Haiphong with the 30 megawatt solar panels that has scalability and to reduce our GHG emissions.
I need to stop you there. Very interesting, but why are we not seeing more of your cars here?
We're in a unique, I'm going to call it a disposition, right? Where our demand exceeds our supply. So we have it's very favored, and we have scalability in our factory, and then we will be meeting the demand. But it's nice to be in a situation where everybody wants one car. We just can't deliver it to you yet. We have so many models of cars, so the entry level for the two-door is very affordable. And if you like that, then you can scale up again. But watch the space; it will be coming to
we'll
Asia.
Get more to that later. I'm going to go over to Bangkok now, Kun Chong Pan, and your towels. Yeah. So, and I'm asking also as a customer, I love your Anantara hotels. So, given the scale of what you do, all those operations together, hotels and restaurants, 56 countries, how do you look at managing your energy consumption, your emissions, water waste, and recycling, given that your hotels don't operate in the same manner? You are either owner or investor or operator, right? So there would be some complexities there. Tell us about the programs and the goals and the metrics that you have in terms of running this.
Okay, thank you. Well, basically, we started off with having, I guess, sustainability as part of our corporate strategy. So we started off there from the top. As I mentioned, that it is something that we feel we need to do. We started back about over 10 years ago looking at sustainability, knowing that the trend is coming, one, but also it's basically our responsibility. So with that, when we started off, it's not even just hotels, different hotels, but also within different business groups and locations that we are in. I guess the level of understanding of what is sustainability is different. So we have to set it off as the tone in the corporate strategy. And from there on, what we have done is that we developed our own sustainability strategy, which has the key pillars being around people, the value chain, and the planet. So as we talk about the planet now, when we started off, we start tracking some performance. We started tracking how we do it, and then we start having targets, both short and long-term targets. At the moment, we have committed to become net zero organization by 2050. And in the short to medium term goals, we also have goals in reduction in greenhouse gas, energy, water, single-use plastic, and waste to landfill. So as we do that, what we have to do is first we have to really educate our people about what is sustainability, why climate change is important, what's the impact to them and to the organization. And then we also set targets with them, work with them, and basically giving the KPIs also to our senior management, and then that cascades down to our property GMs, our staff as well. So people start being a little bit more aware of what we want to achieve and why we want to do it. But it's really important to keep the education in place. We keep educating people who may know more about it, may not know as much, and then we run workshops. The beauty of, well, I guess part of the beauty of COVID that brings about all these online conferences means that we can actually reach more people with our workshops. So we've run sustainability workshops, we run workshops on climate change, and then we also run smaller workshops with the targeted audience who have to be responsible for things like waste committee or doing the energy and greenhouse gas reductions. And then as we do that, we work together with them. And I think the key thing is also involving and engaging our clients. As you mentioned, the towels. I think it's common practice now where you go to hotels and we ask, Okay, if you want to help us save some energy and water, put a little turtle or something on your bed, and that would actually means that you don't want to wash your sheets or your towels every day. But it's really important to have that engagement and an ongoing dialogue with both our staff, having them being our brand ambassadors on sustainability, and also engaging the customers to really drive it forward. Other things that we have to do is really sort of looking at, I guess, translating the benefit of sustainability. And I think in terms of environmental, it's easier because a lot of times you have to actually invest and put in some money, but then you can also calculate returns because of these reductions also means reduction in your cost. So, you know,
Okay, I tell you what, while Kun Chongpan tries to get online, or we try to get her back.
not everyone
There
is
you go.
all, hello?
Yep,
Can
okay,
you
you're back
still
on,
hear me?
Kun Chongpan. Yeah,
All right. Where did I leave off?
okay, thank you. Now I'm going to move to CY. As we discussed just now, you're very different from what you were just a few years ago. Among the things that you are today, you're one of the largest FPSO contractors in the world, right? And since 2019, you've diversified into renewables and so on. Can you talk about the bold targets you set in terms of emission reduction and how this has come out over the last 3-4 years? And we know that some of your levers for decarbonization include reducing the flaring, hydrocarbon at the FPSO terminal, reducing operational energy, and so on. How is that working out? It's a bit technical, but I think it's interesting because you have proven that you are able to do it by going down to this detail.
Yeah, I think we try to set ourselves different from other players in the industry. I think a lot of people are targeting how to build something in a more modular manner. We have gone the direction of how do we build a zero-emission FPSO. So I think that's how we look at our FPSOs in the future. We believe the transition, is real. It's not driven by saving the planet. I mean, saving the planet is good, but it's really driven by cost. Like what Chongpan said earlier, right? 5 years ago we were just talking about, we need to do solar panels for sustainability. Today I think any management should put solar panels on their roof to reduce their costs, right? If you don't, that means you're on a high margin business, you have no cost pressures, which, that's a very good business to be in. So I think people need to understand, right? It's good business to be in sustainability, and it's not about saving the planet, it's about the cost, right? Like EV, right? Today, it is by far, the most efficient technology, with very few parts in a vehicle compared to an internal combustion engine when you have tons of parts. Every 5,000 kilometers, you need to go to the workshop. So I think technological shifts are things that we really need to look at when we move, on the sustainability journey. And it is a culture, right? We are quite blessed to be in a business where a lot of our clients regulate the way we look at biodiversity, emissions, human labor and all. But I think if it's just ticking the boxes to report your data, I think it's wasting of time, and generally the company will just have an ability to adopt ticking the boxes approach rather than how to transform the business from a cultural and values angle, right? So like for Yinsen, we look at sustainability as a value, and it can't be top down, right? Because it's very difficult for your sustainability committee, I think you're part of it, to be telling you, throw this, wash this, do this, do that, right? You just can't think, right? So you need to have that sustainability value concept throughout the organization to be able to drive things. Common sense, try to have that common sense approach so that everybody can do their part and drive it up, and move things, right? And I think all this move the business, and I think for Yinsen we look at as moving towards a zero emission FPSO, and looking at our, we set our 30 by 30 targets where 30% of our equity will be invested in green assets by 2030. So it's the pace of transition as well that we're looking at. So I think values, culture is one thing that will drive it, and also technological shifts that the management must adapt to be able to transform the businesses from a very fossil fuel-based business to a much greener energy transition.
Talk about that 30 by 30 a bit more. How is that getting on?
I think it's good. We are now at 8-9% of our investments, and we plan to be 30% of our equity in green assets. So today we are, from 2018, we were zero in renewable energy. Today we are producing about 500 megawatts of solar. We have about another 5 gigawatts of pipeline throughout different locations. We are the largest charging infra in Malaysia. We have designed our electric boats that are out for trial in Singapore very soon, and by the end of the year. And also, so I think these are how we look at, beyond just renewable energy, green energy, which is producing power, very simple, but moving into the technology space and trying to take electrification as one of the core products that we see, and investing heavily in electrification over the next 7 years, because it's just a very powerful tool, right? Battery to power compared to fuel to power, because the energy loss is just so little in battery to mobility compared to ICE engine to mobility. So I think all this we need to think and how to transform, and it's just interesting because there's no proven model. So yeah, everything is up for grabs.
All right, lovely. I'm going to go to Vinamra of Capital Land. You have a very comprehensive 2030 sustainability master plan, right? Give us more insight into your decarbonization journey and the strategies, and how is that getting on? And do you use, what kind of benchmarks do you use? Given that you are a leader, do you look at other organizations, and what kind of inroads are you making into some of those more detailed strategies?
I think when we started this journey, what we had in mind was how complex and large we are. More than 200 cities. Pretty much we cover all different asset classes of real estate, more than $130 billion of assets under management. So 3 things: strategy, approach, and execution. So for our strategy, we outlined 3 key focus areas. The first and the most important one from an environment point of view was really how do we build a portfolio that is resilient enough. And we outlined clear targets driven by 2050 net zero and working downwards. So for example, we want to reduce our scope 1 and 2 emissions by 46% by 2030. We have targets on energy consumption intensity, water consumption intensity, waste generation intensity. We want to source 45% from renewable energy. And we want to have 25% at the minimum recycling rates as well. So, and all these targets were built bottom up. We have more than 1,000 buildings globally. They were built bottom up and triangulated with the expectations of the stakeholders around us, right? So it was a very 360-degree exercise. Similarly, on the social pillar, our focus is on human capital development. So we've got targets on DEI, on L&D, etc. We focus on social impact that we create, and we measure that. We have focus on health and wellness, especially after COVID, how important well-being of buildings is on the health of its occupants. And of course, a lot of focus on partnering with our customers and suppliers, especially through green leases, for example, because our suppliers and customers' footprint is our scope 3, and that's very critical for us as we expand our journey towards the science-based targets. And the last pillar, which I think in many ways is a given for somebody like us, is focuses on corporate governance, transparent reporting, and ESG risk management. But I think the interesting part really is all this was done a couple of years back. We keep refreshing it. But the focus for Capital Land today is purely on execution. Nobody talks about in the company on targets and the why, etc. It's really day in, day out, what are we executing, right? So two things I wanted to highlight there. First is that we've got a very strict carbon mitigation hierarchy within the company. It starts at design. When we are building a new building, the design has to be a low carbon design in the first place. How can you use natural ventilation? How can you use daylight? How can you use district cooling systems, etc.? So you need to design to avoid carbon emission in the first place. Even the choice of materials that we use, how do we use less embodied carbon materials? So every time we build a building, we give a contract out to a contractor. There's a limit on how much embodied carbon they are allowed to use. If the design doesn't meet that, they're out. The next step is really on energy efficiency, and that's where the focus is on reducing the energy consumption of building, and that is where a lot of technology and innovation comes in. So for example, we've got a platform called Intelligent Building Platform. It's a SaaS platform. We have almost 45 buildings on it. These buildings talk to each other. They do automated fault detection diagnosis. They do predictive analysis. Based on weather conditions, you can adjust how cold or hot your aircon is, so on and so forth. All of this results in huge energy efficiency savings, right? The third lever in the hierarchy is replacing brown with green. So how can I maximize on-site deployment of solar and other technologies? Deploying solar panels off rooftops is a given. I don't think that even needs any formal approval in our process. I mean, it's really criminal if you're not doing that. But it's easier said than done. A lot of buildings, especially in APAC, were designed many, many years back, which means you don't have enough space on rooftops. So these are real practical challenges, right? So we are experimenting with new technologies like micro wind turbines on rooftops. How do you do on-site waste to energy generation? You use the building's waste, generate into electricity, feed it back, right? And then the key lever is really about off-site renewable power purchase agreements. So in countries where the jurisdictions allow us, we are maximizing procuring green power from off-site power producers, because without that, no building can generate 100%, run on 100% renewable if you're not able to do that, right? And only as a last mile, we look at carbon offsets or RECs. Those are only for the hard to abate carbon. They're not part of our core strategy. We want to focus on the real world decarbonization. And the last part of the execution is really now sustainability is integrated into the way we take every decision. So at the investment committee, for example, when investment proposals come to us, we've got a very robust EHSIA process. Let's say I'm acquiring a portfolio of buildings. We will measure the energy footprint of the building. We'll compare it with our 2030 targets. We'll do a gap analysis. And the investment teams have to underwrite the CapEx that is needed to meet those gaps. Because if you don't do that at the investment stage, you will never have the budget to do it. So it has to be factored into your underwriting process. We've got an internal carbon price for different jurisdictions, which again is factored in your entire investment analysis, right? At the operation level, we've got very strict KPIs, and every property manager and every business unit head is driven by those reduction targets, and executive compensation right from the group CEO all the level down is linked to those KPIs. So it's really about how every decision is linked to your objectives on sustainability, and that's how we make it real. So all the dialogue today is, how do I expand my renewable PPAs in India? How do I put more solar panels in X geographies? How do I use more of waste to recycle? So it's really very execution focused than talking at the 30,000 feet level.
And that's how it should be, exactly.
It's really at the 3 feet level now.
One takeaway I got from there, which I will ask my colleague, Mr. Michael Olau, tell our developers, it's almost criminal today if you don't put solar panels on buildings. Okay, so that's
but I want to put things in context. You know, what often gets missed is it's a very important lever. But if you take office buildings in Singapore, the CBD office buildings, right, there's only a limit to how much rooftop solar can run your buildings, usually common area lighting, etc. So you do need off-site renewable to truly go towards net zero.
Yeah. Okay. I have so many more questions, but we're limited by time. I'm just going to ask one question, which actually is for both Dr. Carol and also for CY. And I'll end with one last question for Kun Chompan, so don't go away. And this question comes from the audience, which I think both Dr. Carol and also CY can answer. It's about the same thing. First question, what is the future of hydrogen, please? Second question, Yinsen talk of electrifying. What are your views on hydrogen? So it's both about hydrogen. Maybe I give to Dr. Carol first.
I'll answer for you. While we explore electricity mobility, there's also R&D focusing on other renewable energy sources, right? So one can't exclude something like that, you know, we're a business, and we're always looking into edifices that would be mutually advantageous for our business model. So I think hydrogen is plausible. It has a place in renewable energy or transportation, and I'll pass it on to you now.
Not to be honest, I see a lot of money going into hydrogen, and I'm maybe with that amount of capital it can make it work, but I still find it very difficult to believe hydrogen is the future, unlike a lot of people. I just
Would you
believe,
fly in a hydrogen-powered plane?
I think for use of plane, but to replace road mobility, I find it very difficult. The conversion from power to hydrogen with that 60% loss of energy, I think it's just so inefficient. Like I said, sustainability is about making good business out of it, and with the 60-70% loss of energy, it took the world so much, right, to just study internal combustion, hundreds of years, and it couldn't even be, near to 70% or 30% is still 30% loss, right? But if you talk about electrification, the technology itself, you had hardly any loss of power from battery to mobility. So I just find it very difficult to see something like hydrogen where the fuel itself lose 70% from green power to hydrogen to work. It's just too costly, right? So it may work with so much money going into it, but I don't think in the near future, in the near decade. And also the psychological part, right? Even batteries today, people are saying there's radiation, it catches fire, Imagine hydrogen, right? It's so explosive as a fuel. So I find it difficult.
Okay, so for both Dr. Karen and CY, we're still positive on electric. Yep. Okay. I have only 1 more minute left. We started with Kun Chompan, being the gentleman that I am. We'll end with Kun Chompan as well. Some of the people, including yourself, spoke earlier about the issue of our people, the human resource element within ESG and so on. And given that you have nearly as many employees as hotel rooms, 75,000 employees throughout, how is your approach towards ESG, especially as you operate along many, many different markets, minimum wage, fair working conditions, and so on? And what's the current issues that you're facing?
I think for us, we are actually in what we call the people business, because we don't have we have hotels and all that, but what we sell is actually not the physical hotel, it's actually the people and the services. So we pay a lot of attention to our people. So things like the fair wages and all that, human rights is a given. It's something we have to do and to monitor anyway. That's the foundation. Actually, our approach to people is actually on people development, on how we actually make them better, and also to be able to give them career progress, to be able to make them better personnel for our organization and for the community. So we have what we call the 3 tiers approach to people development, from grassroots, which are the people in the community, they use up until they become our employees. So we look at the grassroots, the workforce, and the talents and leaders. And along these 3 tiers, we actually have different programs of people development that enhances them. From the youth level, for example, we work with vocational schools to actually help them beef up their curriculums to be more real world. We bring in the kids to work for us to get paid. That is basically better for their welfare. We substitute some of their tuition fees. They become our workforce, which is needed for example, restaurant pipelines. And once they actually know us and they graduate, then we have the ability to bring them back as our actually staff. So for them is the training, is the skill that they can get, whether it's actually working for us or working for someone else. And for us, it's really filling that pipeline that we really, really need, especially in this time where it's really difficult to find workforce. And with the basic wages going up, we do need to find a lot of good people and retain them as well. So the ability of having the kids work for us and knowing who we are, how we work, that actually helps a lot in terms of recruitment, attraction, retention of our workforce. And that, at the end of the day, it translates into reduced recruitment costs, reduced retention costs, and reduce training costs as well, because we already have on-the-job training for them so they hit the ground running. And I think similarly, as the team members progress into our organization, we continue to develop them and making sure that they're really one of us. So I think as you mentioned, the basic human rights have to be there. We monitor that from the local level as well as the corporate levels and regional levels. And we make sure that, people are sufficient in what they need. And we also look after the health and wellness as well. We have minor more you programs where we look at, not just the pay aspects, but also the physical wellness and the mental wellness of our people.
Thank you, Chompan. And along the way, all the way, ensuring a just transition. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been my pleasure to host C.Y. Lim from Yinsen Holdings, Chompan from Minor International, Vinamra from Capital Land, and Dr. Morgan Carroll from Vin Group. Please give the panelists a big hand.